Hi everyone, no major news today, so let's get straight into the data as well as the charts. Then we'll finish up with my accounts for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So starting off with the Fear and Greed Index, everything was basically flat today. Last close was 71, last week was a 71. Previous month was extreme greed, and then major indicators, we did see strength dip into regular greed versus extreme greed. We're also seeing breadth and put call ratio decline a little bit back towards greed. Volatility has been in neutral. And then safe haven demand and junk bond demand continue to sit in extreme greed. So it's interesting to see some of these indicators moving a little bit lower into regular greed, despite the fact that markets are going higher. Moving over to seasonality, if you watched the Sunday video, you would know today was expected to be generally flat, but the rest of the month for the Russell is supposed to be quite good. NASDAQ basically flat, and then everything else basically flat until we hit that 18th trading day, which is the Friday session. Moving over to earnings, not a whole lot of earnings for today. United Airlines, fairly interesting, and they did beat both on the top and bottom lines. Tomorrow you got J&J, Procter & Gamble, Netflix. That'll definitely be interesting. Verizon, Texas Instruments, 3M, Lockheed Martin, GE. Quite a few heavy hitters for tomorrow. And then for Wednesday, the big one is obviously Tesla, and then you have IBM, TNT. Fairly interesting. But the heavy hitters are after hours for Wednesday. Nothing that you need to worry about for the morning session. Moving over to the economic calendar, not much for today. U.S. leading index, a little bit better than expected. Only negative 0.1%, quite a bit better than the negative 0.3 expected. And then looking at Tuesday, just 2-year note auction, nothing really. Wednesday, global services PMI and composite PMI, as well as manufacturing PMI. Fairly interesting for economic indicators at 9:45. Moving over to Max Pain, we did tick up a little bit in total options, 775,000. Put call ratio continues to be very high at 2.58. Put wall here at 470. First call wall 485, top of the puts up around 484. Again, remember there's not a whole lot of strength behind these because option numbers are so low, but that would give you about 0.5% higher from current levels to get to the very top of the puts around 486. So a little bit of potential. 45 being that call wall, like I said, so gives you a little bit of room to the upside if the bullish thesis is still intact. And then down to 474 would be your first major put wall. 478 is fairly relevant also, but these numbers are just too low for them to matter. 470 up at 20,000 matters a little bit more. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the SPY, you can see on the hourly chart, moved higher in the pre-market, went sideways throughout the day. You can see slightly bearish doji, 0.21% to the upside, but we did finish below that gapped level. And you can see momentum on the daily chart did flip to bullish here for the first time, going all the way back to 28 December. And this is on a bullish swing. So the last time we saw that was 12 December. And we're still sitting above that level, which is 282.75. That is the high from the Friday session. Again, these are all-time highs, so we don't really have any critical levels. You're just putting them in as you see it, and that was the most recent level. You can see we did hold it. We got very close to testing it. You also have the 21 EMA here on the hourly chart sitting at 483.19. It's not great. Momentum slightly bearish there on the shorter time frames, but the trend is still bullish. Moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis, gapped up, kind of fell through the session. The difference here is that it did get below the level, 421.92, which was the after hours close here for the NASDAQ. If you use the closing price from Friday, that's closer to 421.26, which we are above that level. So it just kind of depends on how you're looking at it. In terms of trend, you can see we're below the 9 and 21 as well as VWAP on the hourly chart, similar to the SPY, starting to make a little bit of bearish momentum on the shorter time frames. And then looking at the daily chart here, you can see obviously still very, very strong. Massive breakout above this previous high. Continues to go higher, 0.13% to the upside. Momentum bullish, RSI still bullish, still overbought conditions. Did see a little bit of a taper on volume, which is interesting. If we see a move lower tomorrow, that could be quite bearish and something to watch for. But right now, the structure is still bullish on the longer time frames. And then moving over to the Tasty charts, I did want to highlight this, and I did talk about it in the Sunday video as well. You can see we hit that third ATR band, got very close to it on the Friday session on the daily chart. We did hit it on the weekly charts for both the NASDAQ and the SPY, but here on the daily chart for the NASDAQ, you can see we did hit it here. That band is currently trading at 423.08, and the high for today was 424.73. So we overthrew it for sure. And you can see here on that first touch, doesn't mean that we're going to pull back immediately. You can absolutely grind at that level before eventually seeing some kind of pullback. Usually you do get some kind of pullback eventually, but the question is what happens after? Do you just get a continuation back up to the upper band, or do you get a breakdown to the lower band? Something I'll continue to pay attention to. And if you like these charts, please let me know in the comments. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell continued its breakout. We got to that downtrend line here, marked from the tops here on 27 December, touched it at the end of the session on Friday, rallied through it after hours, and then continued that massive rally through trend resistance and 195.15. Next level up here, 198.75. Momentum still very bullish. RSI also bullish, not overbought yet. Let's look at it on the daily chart. Absolutely massive. So in terms of levels, we did get to the 21 EMA. We talked about that being a critical point. If it rejects from here, that's going to be quite bearish. This is one of my favorite trades where you see a significant break of the 21, pullback, retest. If it fails here, that's going to be critical. It's going to make a much lower low and probably head down to that 182 area. But if it breaks out from here, then you'll see at least a double top in my opinion. And if that level breaks, then you're looking up to 212. So certainly a critical point right here, something to watch for tomorrow's session. In terms of momentum, you can see we're rolling towards bullish. You would expect a breakout. And then moving over to the Dow, continued its run very, very slowly, held that level at 379.35. Again, these are all-time highs for the Dow, so these levels are not corroborated anywhere else. This is just the wick high from the Friday session. Held that level. Momentum fading a little bit more. Hit overbought conditions, pulling back a little bit, but overall still bullish. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple had a clear higher low setup, rallied out of it, continued to break out, took out that midpoint. Now you're at that same point where we had that initial breakdown to that most recent low, and it'll be interesting to see what happens here. We did overthrow it with some wicks, took out some stops. We'll see what happens. If it can get above 193.96 and hold, then you're looking bullish. But if it rejects from here, obviously that's not going to be good for markets or Apple. Momentum seems to be fading here. It is overbought as well. This move was very, very strong, very, very quick. And then moving over to Tesla, this has been falling for a while. It did get below that trend that we put in on the Friday session. But I do want to highlight the fact that RSI continues to look quite strong here. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit bigger. You can see we hit the low on the Friday session. That was an RSI read of 28.26. And then the RSI read here for today is at 33.37. And that is with the exact same price action. So we have slight divergence on that RSI SMA. So continuing to watch that, seems to be showing a little bit of strength, holding in this area, a little bit of consolidation, tested the 21 EMA. Last time it tested that was up here on 9 January. It's really been a pretty straight down trend, but first test, holding these lows. If it breaks below the low on Friday, obviously that's not good. And then your next level is 197.75, but it's showing some signs of a bounce potential over the next few days. Moving over to AMD and NVDA. AMD gave all of its gains back here from the Friday session, so that's pretty interesting. It opened up on the Friday session around 167, and you can see we are right in that same range, right at that trend line. It's still holding the trend, which is interesting. Go ahead and extend out this other trend, sitting down at 161 or so. So critical point here. If this breaks, you got the 21 sitting at 163.26, and then next trend at 161. AMD has been on a rocket ship from 135 up to 177. So massive move here. Continues to look very strong, but definitely showing some rejection at its all-time highs. And then NVIDIA continues to march higher. It was technically bullish, 0.27% on the day, but going back to the 4-hour chart, you can see it was not very convincing, gapped higher and fell through the session, more like the major indices. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, staples gapped down and fell, not great. 0.49% to the downside. Momentum continues to stay bearish. Gapped through the 21. Now your next support is down at 171.41 at the 144 EMA. And then behind that, you got the 55 sitting just behind my level here at 70.85. So staples rolling over. Interesting to see. It's been a very strong run here from down at 66.41 all the way up to 73. So it's been on a run. It's definitely pulling back a little bit more now. Doesn't mean it can't bounce still. You can see we had a big wick high, pulled back, ended up going much higher, but you do have to respect what you're seeing, which is a bit of a rollover. And then similarly here on discretionaries, tried to bounce, hit VWAP, closed below it, ended up below my level as well here at 174.76. It's falling a little bit more here after hours. Let's look at it on the hourly chart. You can see we had a bit of a run on Thursday into Friday, continued with that gap up, and then gave back some of the gains on Friday. It's back below the 9 and 21 EMAs, as well as VWAP. Still holding that 55, but it's down after hours. And this does look quite a bit weaker here going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to breadth, 20 and 50-day averages both showed bullishness once again, pulled all the way back to the 200 SMA, and the 144 EMA right in that same zone at 55.50. So we've rallied up, touched that area, momentum rolling bullish. You would expect at least a couple more days of bullishness here based on 20-day breadth. So looking to push up to that trend around 61.50. And then you got the 55 EMA sitting all the way up at 72.05, which would be a little bit interesting if we did get to that level. So short term, showing a little bit of bullishness. Looking at the 50-day average, you did have a tick higher on price as well as momentum as well as RSI. So showing a little bit of strength there. But again, this is still a downtrend, 9 below the 21. We had that initial sell-off looking like a bit of a pullback. And then I would expect this to roll over in that more medium term. Moving over to yields. 2-year, basically flat. 10-year, pulled back a little bit after touching the 55 EMA on Friday. Still very much an uptrend. We had this structure. We've been watching it. Touched that trend line, touched the 200 SMA at 409. Held that level, bounced back up to 401. Still think this is going to trend higher. How it does it obviously is worth watching, but continues to look bullish to me. Whereas you have the 2-year yield still at resistance, and I would expect it to break down from that level, getting back into normal conditions. Moving over to the dollar here on the 2-hour and the daily chart, I wanted to highlight the fact that we had these bottoms here today, basically all at the same level around 13.15, which is right here from the wick lows on 18 January, and then we rallied up to that 55 EMA, which is continuing to hold as resistance. If it breaks higher, that could be interesting, but still on the medium time frames on the daily chart here, you see momentum continuing to roll over. That close from Friday was quite bearish. I was expecting a little bit more follow through there, but we touched that 55-day moving average and then bounced a little bit from that level. So had that same level at the 55-day, and then the lows here from Thursday caused a little bit of a bounce. We'll see what happens. If it pulls back from this 55, that could still be bearish. And if the dollar does start to move a little bit lower, that could be a little bit bullish for markets. So something to watch here. Still a bullish structure, still within that structure, but watching for a little bit of a breakdown. Moving over to bonds, JNK gapped higher, threw a wick to that trend, rejected a little bit. We're still in this same wedge structure right in the middle of it here. Found a little bit of resistance. We'll see what happens. Momentum rolling towards bullish. Critical point at that trend line. And then similarly here, looking at TLT. We talked about it bouncing from that 55 EMA on the Friday session. Ended up getting some follow through from that level. 9 EMA sitting at 95.34. Interesting level right at my trend as well. Wait to see if that level breaks or not. Momentum did step quite bullish here today. Went from about negative 0.71 to 0.63. So pretty significant step towards bullish. RSI moving higher. You have at least until it hits the SMA, I think, on the RSI. So that's a couple of points higher. There's a difference of about 5 points on RSI, which could give you a little bit more upside on the TLT. Still very much a downtrend though. 9 below the 21, below the 200 SMA as well on the daily charts. So still looks bearish, just might be seeing a little bit of a shorter term pullback to the upside before we see a little bit more selling. Moving over to volatility here, move index, not doing much anything. VIX on the other hand, gapped higher, hit the trend, fell throughout the session, down to that 1318 level. Again, we expected this to pull back at least to 1275 if it broke that 21 EMA, which it did do here today, so looking for a little bit more bearishness on the VIX. Still watching the structure. We continue to make higher highs, but these lows are right at that same level, so if we pull back, like I said, 1275 makes sense, and then even a little bit lower at 1230 makes sense also. Just waiting to see what happens. Momentum continues to stay on the bullish side, hasn't rolled over into bearish yet, but right now it does seem like it's headed a little bit lower in the short time frames. Moving over to my accounts here, I did roll out the Russell position. I said it looked bullish looking at the charts, so I went ahead and rolled out to that maximum level at 53 days, out to 191 for $9.81 credit. So that does put my sell price up at almost 201 on those shares. So it gives me a little bit more upside, and it ended up rallying after I rolled it. So again, giving me a little bit more potential. So 201 from here, that would be about another $4.50 from current prices over the next couple months. So couple of dollars, hopefully that works out, but still gives me lots of protection. Still deep in the money at 191 for $9. And then looking at the Qs, didn't do anything with that. Rallied up, made money on all of those positions. And then T triple Qs, I did roll out my covered call here to 54 for $3.20 credit. Obviously markets rallied after hours, and I was already deep in the money on that 53 call, so I did roll it, got some of that money back already, but still made money on the shares. So still a good position, I think. And then looking, I still have a 52 put here. As long as markets continue to stay stable for the week, I'll hold that position. I'm at about 50% profit on it. And then XLE, still waiting to see if we get a little bit of a rally to get out of this for $1 or so. Probably not going to happen, but still have the position. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of markets on this Monday session. Did show a little bit of stagnation. Definitely interesting after the massive rallies that we saw last week. What do you think is going to happen next? Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.